So today I'm going to teach you guys the basic things you need to know to start your off-camera flash journey. Hi guys, this is Jiggy, a portrait and wedding photographer from the Philippines, and welcome to the channel. So this entire video will be all about what you need to know about your flash system, your 5 exposure variables for flash photography, the purpose of your light, and I will be giving you a bit of deconstruction wherein I will be showing you pictures of behind the scenes and the actual output after I've put in one flash unit. Alright, so let's begin. So what do you need to know about your flash system? First, your flash mode. There are 2 types of mode. It's manual or TTL. Manual mode is that you have full control of your flash, you control your flash power. TTL means that it's through the lens metering that your flash and your camera work side by side in order for you to get the proper exposure automatically. This is a good way for beginners to start, but this is a high-end system with a high-end trigger, so it's quite expensive. But at the same time, you lack control whenever you're using TTL. The only control you have is basically your flash exposure compensation, in which you can make the flash stronger or weaker, but it is still up to the camera and flash to decide what type of exposure you will be getting. This now becomes a hindrance whenever it's tricky lighting situations. So with me personally, I normally shoot in manual mode only. Next, you have your sync speed. Your sync speed consists of 2, your flash sync speed and high speed sync. So when do you use that? I use high speed sync when I want to do bokeh, meaning I will be shooting wide open, and since I'm shooting wide open, my shutter speed will go beyond my flash sync speed. That's why I have to use high speed sync. Now, there are also instances when I don't need to do bokeh, that I need more of my flash power. That's the time that I would shift now to my flash sync speed. For the camera that I use, which is a Sony, the a7R2, the a7R3, and the a7R4, my flash sync speed is 1/250, so I keep it as that, and then just adjust my aperture accordingly, just so that I can get as much power as I can from the flash. Because high speeds, one of the limits of high speed sync is that it decreases the power of your flash. Next, you need to know the purpose of your light. Okay? You ask yourself now the purpose, whether your light's going to be a key light, a fill light, a rim light, or a background light. If you see in this image that I am showing you now, my key light is the one with an umbrella. On the left side, a reflector serves as my fill light. My rim light is brought about by those 2 speed lights in the back, and 1 background light facing, obviously, the background. Now, the reason why this is important is because whenever you're lighting something, it has to have a purpose, whether it's going to be your key light, your fill light, your rim light, or your background light. As you can see here in this image, every light that I put in will have a specific purpose. And when I show you my deconstruction later, you will notice that every time I put a light, there is a purpose to everything that I put. All right? So next, you've got your exposure variables. I'm sure you guys are familiar, especially if you're already doing off-camera flash photography, about the exposure triangle, which is your aperture, your shutter speed, and your ISO. With flash photography, you add 2 more, which is flash power and flash to subject distance. But these 3 things, like aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, have different rules or different roles when it comes to off-camera flash photography. So let's start. Your exposure variables, shutter speed, number 1. Shutter speed controls your ambient exposure. What do I mean by that? Without changing anything else and just fixing your shutter speed, you are now controlling your ambient light, whether it be sunlight or existing light that's in the scene that you're shooting. So in this slide that I'm showing you, notice that the flash power doesn't change, the flash doesn't move, but the moment I move my shutter speed, you're bringing more ambient light in, or I could also kill my ambient light. So my shutter speed is the one that controls whether or not I'm going to use the ambient light to my advantage, or I'm just completely going to take it out. Next, aperture. Aperture controls your flash exposure. In other words, your aperture is the one that dictates how powerful your flash should be. but also at the same time, aperture controls your creativity. So this is when you can blur out background or not blur out background. So when you're doing things together, your aperture is the one that dictates your flash power. Your shutter speed is the one that controls your ambient exposure. Which now brings us to flash power. This controls the strength of your artificial light. Now, don't get me wrong, all these three things that we're already talking about, it may sound so simple, but I've seen it so many times from beginners who are, it's the first time using off-camera flash. They'll have their flash in a certain way. They'll set it there, take a shot, and then the moment that they see that their image is overexposed, the first thing they do is touch the aperture and the shutter speed, not knowing that they can control the power of a flash, or it's not in their nature to actually control the power of the flash because it is the first time that they are doing off-camera flash photography, or they're still relatively new to artificial light. Now, what you do, let's say for flash power, once you've set your aperture, so the first thing that you need to do, set your aperture and shutter speed, ask yourself if you're gonna kill ambient light or use ambient light, set the aperture that you want, afterwards put in your flash. Once you've put in your flash, that's the time you can dial in the power, meaning if it's underexposed, make the flash stronger, if it's overexposed, make the flash weaker. Next is flash to subject distance. The flash to subject distance is basically the inverse square law, which states that the fourth control for achieving proper exposure is the flash to subject distance, otherwise known as the inverse square law. The inverse square law is an equation that relates the intensity of a light source to the illumination that it produces at a given distance. Light diminishes over distance in accordance to the inverse square law, which states that doubling the flash to subject distance reduces the light falling in the subject to 1/4. You know, this is really a mouthful, but to be honest, this is as simple as I can explain it. The further away you are to the light, the bigger the sweet spot of your light will be. In other words, let's say, for example, if you have the light so close to your subject and one light that's so far away from your subject, the light fall off is so drastic when it's closer to the subject, but the further away you are from the light fall off is not as drastic. Like if you see in this diagram that I'm showing you, right beside the light, you're getting f16, a foot away, you're getting f11, another foot away, you're getting f8, but about 3 more feet away, you're already getting f8 to 5.6, which is just one stop for 3 feet. And then afterwards, you're getting 5.6 to f4, which is very insignificant already, and you've got a sweet spot of about 3.5 feet. And this is about 6 feet away from the light source. So what's the practical application of this one? Basically, let's say, for example, when I'm shooting a wedding, I would have my light far away so that the light, let's say the dance floor, is evenly distributed wherever they may be. Or if I want to shoot a group, I will make sure that the light is not too close to one person, that one person will overexpose and underexpose the rest and all those things. But I think I have a demo later that I will show you how I apply the inverse square law. The last is ISO. Now, the reason why this is important is because one of the limitations of flash is battery life, meaning it is battery powered, it doesn't last too long, and the recycle time is a bit slow. So let's say, for example, I want to shoot at f8, and for me to be able to get f8, I need my flash power to be at full and at ISO 100. So that's going to drain your battery really fast. So if I want to maintain that f8, I could actually go at f8, bring my flash power to 1/8, and then boost up my ISO to 800, which won't be a problem now with the newer cameras because these new cameras can shoot at ISO 1600 with no power. But by doing that, you are making your recycle time faster and at the same time prolonging the battery life. So that's how simple it is. Your 5 exposure variables: your shutter speed, which controls your ambient light, your aperture, which controls your flash power, flash exposure, then you've got flash power, then the inverse square law, which is the flash to subject distance, and ISO. So how do I apply that now to my images? Look at this particular scene that I am showing you now. I have my flash behind the car. If you notice, it's a gloomy day and it was raining. But since it was raining and cloudy, I had fantastic soft light, but no contrast. So my ambient light then became my main light, my flash became my rim light, and I was able to get an image like this. I also positioned the flash in such a way that it looked as if there was a burst of light coming from the sun behind them, which gave them the realistic rim light, and the soft light came from the natural light. I shot this at f4 1/60 ISO 200. My exposure compensation was +1 in order for me to get the proper exposure now for the subject's face. Next, this scene was basically in the side of the road. We stopped because when we were driving, I actually saw the sun peeping because again, it was another cloudy day. I had my Phottix Indra here, and I underexposed the scene to be able to get a shot like this. So I shot this one with my Phottix Indra and a standard reflector with grid to focus the light on them. Underexposed everything by I think 2 stops. My shutter speed was way below my flash sync speed. That's why my aperture was at f13, just to be able to get that power from the flash that I needed. The Phottix Indra is a 500 watt flash, but of course, again, I didn't want to push the flash too much. Another one of those scenes, this was shot by my assistant photographer. This is how it actually looked like. And of course, I wasn't happy with how it turned out. I added a flash and I ended up with an image like this. Again, I was within my flash sync speed. I shot this at f4 at ISO 160. I was about 2 1/3 stop underexposed just to bring out the colors of the sky. And the beautiful thing about these Sony cameras is that even if I underexpose and put most of these things in shadow, the dynamic range of the sensor allows me to pull it and bring it out and balance this image afterwards in post. Now, another reason why I love adding flash is because it allows me to create a vision that I want for a specific scene without having to wait for the perfect time. Meaning when I saw this truck, immediately I wanted to have like an intimate moment in like a drive-in, but normally drive-in movies are at night. So I had my assistant put a flash inside the truck while I shot them through the window and got an image like this. This time I shot it on high-speed sync at f1.8 because I wanted to blur out everything and just focus on them. So from this image, which was at 3 o'clock, I was able to get an image that looked as if they were in a drive-in at night. Next. Okay, so another key here is where you would position your flash. Because I shot this really late at night at 12,800, I think, ISO. The couple was here on the other boat, where you could see with the flash. I was on the other boat. And the reason why I shot at 12,800 was so that I could bring out all these lights that were really there presently in the scene. Now, I put my flash specifically where it was so that it would be easy for me to be able to take it out in post. I shot this one at ISO 12,800 1/60, and I was actually overexposed by about a stop and 1/3 to bring in all this ambient light in. Next, right? So when I'm shooting sunsets, I hardly get that perfect sunset. It's you know, as much as you'd say we live in a tropical country that we get beautiful sunsets, we don't. Not all the time. And for some reason, every time I'm shooting, I just don't get it. So I have to be able to bring out the sunset that's hiding. So I bring my flash with me all the time. And with this one and a slight tweak of white balance, I'm able to get a shot like this. Very, very simple. One light, with a Phottix Indra, 1/250 f13, underexposed it by 1 stop, put my white balance on the warmer side, brought out the colors because of the sensor of the camera. The colors were all captured. I love how this shot turned out given the situation in which we were in. Next, this is how the scene looks like if you take a properly exposed image of the guy inside the plane. But there was something hiding behind it that you would only see whenever you would underexpose a scene. And so I had my light on the left side, and this is the image that I got. I shot this one with a 70-200 in order to bring the clouds closer to him. I had the Phottix Indra on the left side just to be able to give him that side lighting. 1/250 f22. So that's how bright it was for me to be able to control the light to bring it down 3 stops in order for me to bring out this I don't know how you pronounce it. I think it's crepuscular rays of the sun. Correct me if I'm wrong. You guys can always correct me if I mispronounce that. Next, that's why I also love having this small flash units, because I can put them anywhere. And this one, when I went to London, this is one shot I really wanted to take. I had my couple go inside, pop the flash, and that became my main source of illumination. I shot this on high-speed sync so that I can bokeh the background and bring out those nice blue skies that you hardly see in London. Next, another scene which a small flash unit really helps is because of this one. We shot this place actually had a fantastic view, but at that time it was so cloudy and it was raining. But of course, with this type of shot, if you don't have any flash, you won't see the rain. So if I put a flash inside the umbrella, and this was the output that I got, I kept my shutter speed again within the flash sync speed. I shot it at f18 ISO 100 with an exposure compensation of -3 stops. Okay, so this is when I was telling you guys that the inverse square law actually comes into play. I had this vision for this scene that I wanted to light up all the trees behind them evenly, and I wanted the scene to be darker, more moody, more dramatic. So I had 2 lights here. One was on the top right, which was around 150 away, about 30 feet higher, just to illuminate all those trees in the back. In this case, I'm showing it to you now there. You can see the light there. All those trees now are properly balanced in terms of light. If I put the light closer, one tree would be brighter than the next, so it wouldn't look so natural. Then I put in another light with a deep octabank, and this was the output that I got. I shot this at 1/60 f1.4 ISO 400 at -3 stops just to be able to create that dark mood. I boosted up my ISO just to be able to increase the power of my flash. Next, another gloomy day. This was in Australia. Good thing I had my flash with me again. I really love the way the waters were flowing. That's why I wanted to shoot in the scene even though it was so gloomy. But we were able to bring out a little bit of detail in the clouds just by popping the flash, which was on the right. I shot this again within the flash sync speed, which is 1/250 at f9 ISO 100. Last but not the least, this is the scene properly exposed. Now, since they were inside the kalesa, we call that a kalesa here in the Philippines, if you expose for them, everything else will be overexposed. That's why what I did was I put the flash in the natural direction of the setting sun, and this was the image that I was able to get. So I had my flash right here on the side, which another Phottix Indra. My shutter speed was within my flash sync speed, which was 1/250. This was at f8 ISO 100 with a 16:35 just to be able to get that wide angle look. Flash hit them directly on the face, which illuminated them. Everything was actually exposed for the background. I hope you guys found that useful. And in a nutshell, again, the thing that you need to understand with your flash, whether or not you're going to go manual or TTL, if with all the pictures I showed you, I was on full manual the entire time. High-speed sync or flash syncs would say within your flash sync speed. If you notice, I use both. Then you've got 5 exposure variables, which is basically your aperture, your shutter speed, your shutter speed, which controls your ambient light, your aperture, which controls your flash exposure, your flash power, your flash to subject distance, and your ISO. Then you've also got your purpose of your light, which is your key, your fill, your rim, and your background light. And that's it. That's basically it. I hope those little things that you learned from this video today helps you start off in the right foot when it comes to your flash journey. So if you guys want to see more of my work, you could follow me on Instagram at Jiggy Alejandrino. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, I would appreciate it if you do. And if you could click that notification bell also so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. All right, so till the next video.